Hey, what's up guys, Mo571 here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Focal Elex. Apparently that's the correct pronunciation. I'm usually one to get the pronunciation carefully correct, but apparently I missed that on the first review. I'm going to be talking about this headphone again for a take two review, and this will be shorter, I think, than the first one because I just want to touch on a couple things that I noticed while having this second unit. Well, first of all, it's still very similar to the first unit. Judging by my reactions and in terms of the sound, though, I think this one might be a little bit better, a little bit less grainy. But don't go in the comments going like, Metal said there's tons of variation on the Elex. I highly doubt that. They're probably more similar than different, but this one did sound slightly better. Now, one of the most interesting things I discovered, I hadn't actually used the 660S in a while, and I brought it out to AB against the Elex, and actually it was a pretty interesting experience because pretty much the Elex is a 660S kind of a sound signature, but with about 3 or 4 dB and a narrow peak at 10 kilohertz, and there's quite a bit more bass extension. Other than that, it's incredibly similar sounding to the original Sennheisers. And I can see why Tile liked the Clear so much, because the Clear is very similar to the Elex, as far as I'm told. I did hear it at Can Jam, and like the Clear in particular, and I thought it sounded a little bit cleaner than the Elex I had before. So this one sounds more similar to the regular Clear, which would kind of make it a bargain. But I'll get into pricing in a second here. But I want to say something really important that I want to be a takeaway here is that this might be holding the wrong headphones, too many of them. This might be probably the best frequency response I've heard, natural frequency response, in maybe the history of modern headphones after the Sennheiser series. It's incredibly accurate tone-wise. It's just a couple tiny things, not even a couple, just one really tiny thing that bothers me. That's that the mid-treble is really peaky in a very narrow region. Other than that, it's really accurate, really neutral sounding. Even, well, for me, it's a little bit bright, but only a little bit bright, just a little bit. And that's what's interesting, except for that mid-treble peak, which might not bother some people. So I want to get very clear that people were all over me on the first Elex review at saying that. And actually, that's pretty true. You know, if you're not going to use EQ and you like a slightly brighter tone, and the mid-treble doesn't bother you on this thing, this is one of the best headphones you can buy, I think, out of everything I've heard, honestly, in terms of frequency response. That's better than the Sennheiser line, because I have like both of these, the 6XX and the 660S. In terms of detail, actually, is very similar though, with the 660 versus the Elex, and that was interesting. And it also remembered that clearly the 660 outresolves the 6XX, which clearly outresolves the 58X. If you put them side by side, you'll find that. It's nothing to do with the frequency response. They are slightly different in FR, but you can hear the haze in the treble and the indistinctness on hi-hats that distinguishes the headphones in the line. That said, of course, I think the 660 is still quite overpriced, especially with how Massdrop is pricing the 6XX nowadays. And so what I'm going to say here is that at $699, it seems like the Elex is still too expensive for what it is, because the soundstage on it really is still, I don't think, that much of an upgrade over the 660S or the 6XX, which pretty much have the same stage. Although I did notice that the soundstage is slightly wider, but not by much, and the imaging is more fair. It's less 3-blob. The Sennheisers have always been, there's stuff out to the sides and there's stuff in the middle, and in between there isn't much, and the Elex is more fair, and it gives you a more balanced imaging throughout the whole region in front of you, and the soundstage is just slightly wider. It's not close to as wide as the LCD 2 Classic, which I also have on my desk. My desk is basically folded in order to do this review. But so that's what I think of the Elex now, and taking all of this in and really thinking about value, which is really the thing that at least subjective value that I try to come up with how much headphones should cost. If I priced all of these things, I think what I would say is the Elex would fall around $499, not $699, and the 660S would be priced at around $299, and the 6XX and the 58X are about appropriately priced now with this new model. And I think the LCD2 Classic still falls around $599 maybe, if I were to fairly price it. But you can actually find one of these for $399 used nowadays. The LCD2 Classic is pretty cheap on the used market if you're looking for that kind of thing. But yeah, so I think the Elex, although it's very, very good actually, especially frequency response wise, it's just a little bit, it's a little bit bright, around 10K, and with the 660 sounding about the same as it a lot of the way through, including the soundstage in a little bit. It's the Elex is still a minor upgrade, but I'm gonna say it's still an upgrade over the Sennheisers. I'm not sure if that's what I said last time. I think I said it was barely an upgrade, but it costs a lot more, and I think that's still my point. But really, if it costed $499 and the 660S dropped to $299, we'd have a good, solid value here for all of these headphones. The other thing I wanted to mention, other than the sound, was the cable. I don't know how I missed this, but the cable is so bad in terms of its design. There's nothing wrong about actually getting a balanced cable in the box. That was what I was trying to say in the first review, but the cable is so stiff and annoying that it really could have been a lot better in terms of build quality. So people gave me a lot of flack for that in the first review, and I would have to say that is very justified, because the cables that the Elex come with are not something you should be putting with a $799 headphone. So I hope that gives you some more perspective after a second take on the Elex here. And again, I just want to stress the frequency response is very, very good on the Elex. I prefer the LCD2 Classic with a lot of EQ, because the FR is nowhere near as accurate on this. I mean, obviously, I think what separates me, interestingly, from a lot of the other reviewers is that I really am extremely not shy to use EQ. And for a lot of people on the other end who don't even want to bother with it, I totally understand that. And that's why you probably are not going to like the Odysseys very much, because as some people have said, if you're into jazz or classical or stuff like that, and you're used to something like the Elex or a DT880, man, as soon as you put on Odysseys, it just sounds like everything gets a blanket over it. And I can totally understand that, because if you listen to the LCDs with no EQ and you're listening to really, really well recorded music, it's going to sound really dark, and I totally understand that. So if you're one of the people who doesn't want to EQ and you're not treble sensitive, hey, the Elex is definitely an option. I just think it should be a little bit cheaper to be more competitive, mainly because of the soundstage width, and frequency response could still be a little bit warmer. They could have gotten rid of that peak. If they got rid of that peak, it would be incredible. This would be the ultimate Sennheiser upgrade. It's just not quite that. It's slightly different. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you can digest all of that information and make a better decision on whether you'll like it or not. I don't hate the Elex. The Elex is good, but it could still be cheaper, is basically my point. And if you're not going to EQ, it may totally be worth it for you, and you should try it. So I'll see you guys in the next review.